Hello,
Hello, may I speak to Tom Loeffler, please?
this is Tom.
Hi, Tom. This is Deandra with the Ruckus Podcast. I'm also joined by Ismail Dusalam of Beats Boxing Mayhem, Ryan Bivens of Sweet Boxing, and Brandon Stubbs, Punch to the Face. We're live doing the show right now. How are you doing tonight?
Good, how are you?
Excellent. Thank you. For those of you who are just tuning in, we're now speaking with Tom Loeffler, who's the managing director of K2 Promotions. K2 Promotions, of course, promotes Vladimir Klitschko, Gennady Golovkin, IBO Cruiserweight Champion Ofalabi Ola, and a few other fighters in their stable. You know, you've definitely seen them on TV and in the ring making a lot of noise. Before we start launching into our questions, Tom, you know, something I've always wanted to ask you, you know, we see so much of your fighters since they're so dominant in their respective divisions. Tell us, for those listening who don't know a whole lot about your history in boxing and how you came to be with K2, can you tell us a little bit of how this came to be that you oversee such dominant players in the boxing game?
Sure. Well, I actually started in the boxing business back in 1991. I had a partner, Harlan Warner, who was representing retired athletes, and his biggest client was Muhammad Ali, or still is Muhammad Ali. He works with Muhammad still, and so he wanted to sign some active fighters, but he didn't really know much about managing boxers. So I got involved on the management side. The first fighter that we worked with was Kevin Kelly, who became the WBC featherweight champion at the time, the first featherweight to be back on HBO since Salvador Sanchez. So that was a great start there. And then we worked with Obakar, who was probably the best fighter that never won a world title. And then Shane Mosley, we worked with Shane for about 2 years when we got him the title fight against Philip Holliday for the IBF title. And then, we had about 10 different fighters that we're working with. And then I got in contact with both the Klitschko brothers in 1999. So after about 9 years of managing fighters, I met the Klitschkos over in Germany. I actually was managing Ed Mahone, who was a fighter from the Forum here in Los Angeles, and put together a title fight for him against Vitaly Klitschko for the WBO heavyweight title at the time. And I was good friends with Vitaly's publicist at the time, and he introduced us, and I told Vitaly after the fight. Vitaly wound up knocking out Ed in the third round, but I told Vitaly he was welcome to come to California anytime. And about 6 months later, he came out, and we developed a friendship, and that turned into a business relationship about 3 years later when we started K2 in 2003. That was the year he fought Lennox Lewis at the Staples Center. And ever since then, we promoted all the Klitschko fights since 2003, and we signed Gennady Golovkin about 3 years ago now, which Gennady's doing very well, and we're very excited about the success of all the guys.
Excellent. I'm going to hand it off first with Ismail, who has some questions for you. Go ahead, Ismail.
Thanks, Deandra. Tom, the first question I have for you is, being that you've been in the business, a little bit over 20 years, the way things are now, we know with the politics of boxing is kind of taking more center stage than the actual in-ring action. Because there's so much press that's reporting what's behind the scenes, with the blogs and what we have with the Internet, does that make your job easier when you're in negotiations, to make fights, or does it make it more difficult?
Well, I'll tell you, things come out a lot quicker than they used to now with social media and all the, like you mentioned, the podcasts and things of that nature. Definitely, as far as the presence of the social media, you can build fighters and clients that way and promote an event that way a lot easier. It's definitely changing the landscape of not only boxing but sports in general. And with the politics, I try to stay neutral. I like to work with the best just the people that would benefit whether it's Gennady's career and trying to pick out the right opponents or the best opponents for him, whether it's a fighter from Golden Boy or Top Rank, or if Al Heyman is a fighter. So I have a good relationship with really all the promoters, and I try to stay out of the fray of all the politics.
You have a good relationship with Al Heyman?
Sorry?
You have a good relationship with Al Heyman?
Sure. I have a good relationship with Al. Jonathan Banks fought 3 times, twice against Seth Mitchell, who was with Al Heyman, and also recently against Antonio Tarver. So I get along with Al fine.
So do you see a potential Golovkin-Quillen fight ever happening?
Well, that's that's not a question for our side. I've made it clear that Gennady would fight really anyone in the middleweight division. We reached out a couple times to the Quillen side, even before Peter had won the WBO title. And then, when he was a champion, trying to make the unification fight, we could never really work out details on that. I mean, Gennady has an exclusive contract with HBO, and Peter at that time was fighting on Showtime, so it just didn't seem to work out on the the television side of things. But if that opportunity ever came up in the future, we'd certainly welcome that.
And do you plan on having Gennady on HBO like his entire time fighting in the United States?
Well, it depends. Depends how it works out. I mean, Gennady has become now one of the most marketable fighters in the sport. I mean, when you can fight at Madison Square Garden, that was July of last year in the big arena. It was the first time anyone besides Miguel Cotto had fought in the big arena at the Garden for the past 8 years. And then you can come out. It comes out to we brought him to StubHub out here in California, and he breaks all the attendance records. More sales than when Chavez fought Brian Vera there, more ticket sales than when Andre Ward fought Arthur Abraham there. I mean, some big names have fought at the StubHub Center, and Gennady pretty much broke all the records there. So when you have someone that's become as marketable as Gennady has on a platform that HBO has built for him, it's a pretty successful combination, I think.
Right. So, do you think it's mainly about HBO just offers him the best financial package? So if somebody else had a better offer, he would be willing to move.
Well, HBO certainly is paying significant license fees now. I mean, it used to be the excuse for not fighting Gennady was that he was a very dangerous fighter, but didn't bring a lot of financial compensation to the table. But now with the ticket sales that he generates, the HBO license fees, the sponsors that he brings to the table, I mean, that excuse has gone out the window a while ago. So, certainly with the financial backing of HBO, he does bring a lot of financial leverage to the table. We can go out and try to get the biggest fights available. It's just you can't force guys to get in the ring with them. I mean, when we were negotiating with Chavez last year, our deal was done with Top Rank, and I know Bob had offered Julio $7 million to fight Gennady. So when you're turning down those type of numbers, you just can't force the guys to get in the ring with them. It's a matter of just continuing to go forward with the guys that will actually go in the ring with them.
Switching back to gear to Gennady's upcoming fight on February 21st against Martin Murray, how easy was it to coordinate that fight given the difficulty you've had with other competitors in his weight division?
That fight actually came together. It actually worked out okay on the timing. We tried to fight Murray earlier. Martin's had an issue as far as getting his visa to come to the United States, so there was an opportunity at one point to fight him in Canada on a show. We had made an offer at that point, but that didn't really go anywhere. But then he signed with Rodney Berman, who's the promoter of the fights in Monte Carlo, and Gennady's fought there twice, and Murray's fought there twice, so it was just kind of a natural direction to go into. Murray is now rated number 1 in the WBC, and so when he agreed to fight Gennady, it was just a natural fight to make.
Ismail?
Being that you mentioned Gennady's increased ticket sales and also viewership, just a hypothetical. Let's say that you had an Andre Ward fight on the table at this point. Would you consider Gennady the ace out of that fight now that he's increased his buying power to the point where he is now?
I think Gennady's established himself as one of the most marketable guys in the sport. I mean, he's not on pay-per-view only because, whether you have a Canelo or Cotto, a Mayweather or a Pacquiao, I mean, those are pretty much the guys that are established on pay-per-view. The Chavez fight would have been on pay-per-view, and that's where that offer that Bob had come up with, to offer Julio. But besides that, I think Gennady is right there, right underneath those names. And Andre, unfortunately, had his issues on the promotional side with Dan, and had sat out for a while. And I think he said he's wanted to get back in the ring with a tune-up fight. So I think Andre is clearly established himself as a great champion. 168, where he won that Super 6 tournament. And he beat some great names, but that was a while ago. I think with his issues on the promotional side, he's lost a lot of traction. And I think Gennady in that time period has clearly established himself as with the ratings on HBO, with the ticket sales, and with the sponsors he brings to the table. I think with Rock Nation now getting into the sport of boxing and Andre signing with them, I think that will create a lot of momentum for his career. And we've always said that Gennady would move up to 168 or even down to 154 if it was the right type of fight. And the economics of a Golovkin-Ward fight on HBO the financial package isn't big enough to satisfy that. That'd have to be a pay-per-view fight. And right now, between those two guys, it wouldn't necessarily be a pay-per-view fight. But if Andre, gets back in the ring and is active, and Rock Nation supports him, with their media platform, I could see that fight definitely happening.
How have you managed to, we see so many instances of different promoters who don't want to work together, have difficulty working together, or coming to any type of deals. How have you managed to successfully navigate the waters and stay true to your fundamental ideas and still work with all these varieties of personalities?
Well, I just try to, you can use Gennady as a perfect example. I just try to make the best fights for him, regardless of who the promoter is. Curtis Stevens was with Main Events at the time, and that was the best name when Gennady fought him. That was at the theater at Madison Square Garden. He headlined that show. Daniel Geale was a 2-time world champion, and he was with Gary Shaw, and he was the best available guy at that time that would agree to him. You can't forget Felix Storm, who was considered one of the best middleweights and the best. He was a WBA champion for a long time. Gennady was his mandatory for 2 years. We could never get Sturm to fight him in the ring, and he was able to maneuver with politics to avoid Gennady for that length of time. But it's really whoever agrees to fight him. That's who we'll work with. We had some discussions with Golden Boy, who I also have a good relationship with, about David Lemieux fighting Gennady, but that looks like that fight is a little bit down the road, but they've shown some interest. So it really just depends on who will agree to fight him, and we just try to put the best deal and the best fight together for him at this point.
Ismail?
With Klitschko hopefully coming to fight in the U.S. against Jennings in April, is the plan to try and reestablish his name here in the U.S., or do you think that's going to be a one-shot deal, that actual fight, as far as his U.S. appearances?
No, I think you'll see Vladimir fighting here more often now. HBO has renewed their interest in the heavyweight division, and Vladimir's fought 3 times before at Madison Square Garden in the big arena. He had the unification fight with Ibragimov. He fought Calvin Brock there, and he's done very well over there. It's just the economics where he became so popular in Europe, and then the German television deal that we had signed, and just the economics didn't warrant fighting over here, and there were really no standout big names over here in the U.S. for a television broadcaster over here to say, okay, we're going to step up and give you, a big license fee in order to bring it over here. Now that Brian Jennings had a couple of great wins. He beat Szpilka. He beat Mike Perez, who's also with us. That was on the co-feature of the Golovkin-Guile fight. He's undefeated. He's from Philadelphia. That makes a lot of sense. So, Vladimir fighting an undefeated American heavyweight who's actually the mandatory for the WBC and for Wilder's title. He chose to, take the deal that we offered him for Vladimir's fight. So, Wilder definitely had a nice win over Stavern, and he got a lot of attention for that win, and that would be a huge fight at some point, unifying the titles. That's really what Vladimir's goal is he's proven to be the most dominant heavyweight champion here in recent times, and he certainly wants to unify the titles. He wasn't able to, when Vitaly, his brother, was fighting and was long-standing WBC champion, but that's really what Vladimir's goal is at this point.
Do you think the WBC will honor, Brian Jennings' previous mandatory position if Vladimir defeats him?
No, if he loses to Vladimir, then he would lose the mandatory position.
Yeah,
so there's
right. I know he would lose it, but would Vladimir in effect get it?
No, he wouldn't automatically inherit the mandatory because as a champion, you're not really in the ratings as a mandatory. With Gennady, it was a little bit different when he beat Rubio. Part of the strategy there was Rubio was the mandatory for Miguel Cotto. He's the interim WBC champion, so when Gennady beat him, he became the interim champion, which is automatically the mandatory for Cotto's title. So WBC's made it clear that whoever Miguel fights in his next fight, the winner of that fight has to fight Gennady. So it's really my job to strategize outside the ring while Gennady and Abel come up with their strategy inside the ring.
Brandon, you had a question for Tom?
I did. Tom, yeah, I'm here. Tom, my question was, you brought us Gennady Golovkin. We have the Klitschko brothers who you've worked with, but who else is on the radar for K2 that you're going to be bringing over to the States and giving more exposure to us U.S. fans to that we should be looking out for this year and in years going forward?
Well, we have a sister company. It's called K2 Ukraine, and they have their own television dates over in Ukraine, and they signed a great fighter, Alexander Usyk, who won the gold medal in the London Olympics 2012. He's undefeated right now. He's fighting a cruiserweight, but I could see him moving to heavyweight within a year or 2 years, and he's a tremendous fighter. And then Mike Perez, now he's going to fight next week here locally in Orange County, and then we're working on a fight between him and Alexander Povetkin, which is the 2 highest rated guys in the WBC right now, to fight for the number 1 title if because Jennings went the direction to fight Vladimir. So the winner of Povetkin and Perez would become the mandatory then for the WBC. So he's in a good position. Ola Afolabi is the mandatory for the IBF Cruiserweight Championship against...
when is that finally going to happen? That's been delayed for so many times.
Yeah, it was delayed because Hernandez got injured, and then he was out for a longer period of time than what the IBF rules allowed. So so it looks like they're going to fight for the interim title against Gilberto Ramirez from Argentina, and then the winner of that fight then will fight Hernandez. And by that time, hopefully Hernandez will be able to get back in the ring.
Okay.
Tom, we have a question from you from one of our Twitter followers, Dre Cade. He would like to know any chance that Gennady would have any interest in getting the winner of Canelo versus James Kirkland.
Oh, absolutely. We had been, James Kirkland is a great fighter. He had a big win over Tapia. And, we were looking at fighting him before, but we were never able to put a deal together to get Kirkland in the ring. But, the winner of Canelo Kirkland certainly is a very marketable fighter. It would be a great fight for Gennady.
Excellent. Ismail.
I also wanted to ask you, being that it seems like it's been very important for Gennady to make sure that he travels. It seemed like MSG was his de facto home for a little bit. Then also Monte Carlo, he has a base there, and now he's establishing a base in L.A. with his last fight. Are there any other places around that you want to see him fight at, besides, of course, Las Vegas? Do you see him continuing to kind of travel around the different places to really build his rep, or do you see, as he becomes a pay-per-view fighter, him settling down just to Las Vegas like a lot of fighters do?
Absolutely. That was really the goal, or that is the goal with Gennady, is really to bring back the definition of being a world champion, and he'll go to fight wherever the fights are. He'll definitely go. I mean, there's a promising middleweight coming out of Japan right now named Murata, who's with Mr. Honda. He's undefeated, and if he becomes higher and more recognized, then that'd be a great fight for Gennady to go over to Tokyo and fight over there, and really see Gennady had so many amateur fights that he doesn't really care who he fights or where he fights, and so it just goes back to the philosophy of building his global brand, and that's a big part of it. A lot of people ask, why are we going back to Monte Carlo when we just fought over here and so successfully in the United States? But there's two reasons for that. Number one is that HBO doesn't have 4 dates on their schedule to have 4 domestic fights for Gennady, but also an important part of it, and this also plays into when Vladimir fights over in Europe, his fights aren't really prime time over here in the States, but it's the same thing when Gennady fights over here. His fights aren't prime time for his European fans, and he's got a huge fan base now in the UK, in Poland, in Germany, and obviously in Kazakhstan and the Russian-speaking countries. But the fight in Monte Carlo puts him in prime time in those regions, and you have to keep a sense, for the boxing fans over there internationally, which a lot of fighters kind of lose track of when they only fight in one location, one city or one state over here in the States.
Before we wrap it up with you, Tom, tonight, I have to ask you, one fun question. How tired is Vladimir at this point of the Shannon Briggs Let's Go Champ campaign?
I tell you, Shannon is a star in Germany. I mean, when he chases Vladimir around and shows up at the press conferences and at the weigh-ins and the open workouts and with his films, it gets old after a while. It was a little bit, it was kind of entertaining for a while, and I understand Shannon, he's a self-promoter, and he certainly put up a great fight against Vitali. I mean, Vitali won pretty much every round and really, inflicted a lot of damage on Shannon. I really think they should have stopped that fight, actually, but he was one of the few guys to go 12 rounds with Vitali. And that was one of the highest rated shows over in Germany. And then, Shannon's the type of guy who wants to get back into a title shot and realizes that Vladimir brings the most money, to the table for that. So that's really his motivation on that. And like I said, he's a great self-promoter. It just, sometimes the videos cross the line when you're, when Vladimir is exercising, training for a fight, and Shannon is, circling him with a boat and knocking him off the paddleboard. You never know if Vladimir hurts his ankle or his hand or something like that, and you have to cancel a multi-million-dollar fight. at some point it doesn't make sense anymore what he's doing. But that's really what Shannon's angle is trying to get position himself for another title fight.
All right, gentlemen, any final questions for Tom before we wrap up?
Yeah, I got a question. Triple G is currently at, I believe, 18 straight knockouts. When do you think the streak finally ends?
I don't see anyone at 160 pounds that can go 12 rounds with Gennady. I mean, he has such a different arsenal of his punches, whether it's body shot, a straight right hand, like he knocked out Ishida, where he knocked him to the ropes in the Monte Carlo, or left hook to the head, or even that kind of upper that hook that he threw from over the top against Rubio. I mean, he's got such a different variety of punches and such a pressure style where he's able to cut off the ring really better than any fighter that I've seen. So I don't see that. Maybe if he takes a fight at 168, it might go. Carl Froch is a very durable guy. Chavez is certainly very durable. Andre Ward is a masterful boxer. But at 160 pounds, I don't see anyone going 12 rounds with Gennady.
Okay, so how long do you think the Martin Murray fight lasts?
I would say his knockout streak continues with that fight, and that's no disrespect to Murray. I mean, he's never been stopped before. He only had 2 losses. Well, actually, only had 1 loss in his career, which was against it was a controversial loss against Sergio. He arguably dropped him twice in his home country of Argentina, and came away, losing a very close decision. And then the only other, then he had a draw against Felix Sturm in Germany. And if you get a draw in Germany, you can pretty much figure you won the fight over there. So we really look at Murray as an undefeated fighter and another guy that's never been stopped. But again, I just no disrespect to Murray, I just don't think that he can go 12 rounds with Gennady.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, Tom. It's always a pleasure to speak with you now on the show when I see you at the different media events. So we'll definitely be checking out Gennady's fight on February 21st on HBO in Monte Carlo, and we look forward to seeing the outcome and seeing what's up next for Vladimir and the rest of your stable.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me on, and look forward to seeing you at the next events.
All right. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.